Hello and welcome to Chinballs Gaming Podcast. Oh, sorry, the Chinballs Gaming Podcast. I am Scawp and I am joined today by Prox. Say hello, Prox.
Hi, Scawp. How you doing, mate?
I'm good. And this is the Chinballs bi-annual or bi-monthly podcast.
Yeah, I always get confused with that
yeah,
use of "by." Does
yeah.
it mean twice a thing or every two?
Exactly.
Apparently,
That's why we picked
like
it.
yeah, can mean
Ambiguity.
both, but let's be honest, nobody ever knows.
Yes. However, we are going to commit to doing one podcast a month. So this will be
Yeah, man.
January's podcast, unless I forget to put it out, and then it will be February's. Right. Okay. We're gonna stop dicking about now, and we're here to talk about some games and stuff. And we didn't decide on an episode title, did we? But
It'll come. Do you know what?
it'll come.
It'll be something amazing that we say during this will be the title of this.
It will. It will.
So, Scawp, it's one thing we always ask ourselves: what have you been playing, pal?
You know what? I have actually been playing games. I have
Yes,
legitimately played some games, more than one game, in fact. And I feel quite proud of myself, quite honestly. So we've played, I've completed The Quarry. We did start that on Halloween. We started it on Halloween, and we've had like 3 or 4 sessions. I think we've 4 sessions since then. If you've not heard of The Quarry, it is basically the sequel or spiritual sequel. It's made by the same devs, but they released it through a different studio. But it's Until Dawn. So the people that made Until Dawn, Supermassive Games, and they also made the Dark Pictures series, you know, the Man of Medan and Little Hope and these kind of things. But The Quarry was like commissioned from 2K Games, so like a big publisher asked them to make a game for them, and they did. But it's basically Until Dawn 2 if you play it. It's just a group of teenagers, you know, it's typical horror story, a group of teenagers in some isolated location, all getting murderized by some crazy stuff. And as usual, me and my girlfriend played it, and we murdered basically everybody because we are really bad at them, but we love them. And what's really funny about it is that I intentionally put it on easy this time to stop my girlfriend killing everyone.
Oh, you've reached
it was
that
me.
point in your life.
It was me that killed everyone. Out of 8 characters, only 2 survived. We just like But the thing is, like, on the normal parts where you're doing these quick time events, 'cause it's all about quick time events. I know people don't really like these all the time, so it was quite easy getting through it all. But always the one where you could actually be murdered on probably is you just accidentally slip with the elbow and hit the hit the D-pad or whatever, and like instantly just dead. It's like, oh no. But yeah, I like them. It's trash, but I enjoy them. Yeah, like I say, I've played quite a lot of things. I've been getting back into Resogun, if you remember Resogun on the PS4. The reason being is
you were really good at that at one point.
Yeah, I'm trying again. Yeah, it's now 10 years old. Basically, it was PS4, like one of the PS4 launch titles 10 years ago. It's that. So I would say that is now officially retro. And seeing as it was a game inspired by a retro, it's basically a Defender clone, and it's 10 years old, and it has aged amazing. And I'm playing it on the PS4. My friend is playing it on the PS5, so it looks better. It runs faster. It's got HDR. I'm still playing it on the PS4, and it looks perfect, and it plays perfect. It's just so responsive. You know, it doesn't miss a beat with the 60 frames a second. I mean, it's only a simple game. It's all voxels, but it is basically Defender, the perfect Defender arcade game. It is just so good. And it's a shame that, people still must be playing it because there's a weekly challenge. And I've been playing the weekly challenges for the last few weeks. It's weekly challenge 480. So it's only like a set of so many, I think, but there's a lot of them. It's like 100 or different ones. But there's still people playing. There's still 200 people on the weekly leaderboard, which I'm quite surprised at. So that's been good. But yeah, lots of other things as well. Redfall, amazingly. Dead Island 2.
Redfall, go on, really?
Redfall,
yes. I'm an absolute arcane, I should say.
Oh yeah, I'm an absolute
arcane fanboy. But the reviews of Redfall put me off so badly that I went nowhere near it. And this is astounding for somebody like I pre-ordered Deathloop. I think I was one of the 3 people who actually paid money for Deathloop. Yeah. So yeah, tell me about Redfall.
Well, I wouldn't say the reviews are necessarily wrong, but You know, a game needs to make a good first impression. This game does not.
Right.
There's so many, like, I play with a controller and I was playing it on an Xbox, and immediately when I started, I was moving around like, this just doesn't feel right. So I had to go into the settings, and it's one of those stupid menus where you've got to use like a fake mouse with the D stick to move to buttons and click them, which is obviously not ideal UX. And I had to change the stick sensitivity from different curves. It's like, why should I? I've never done this in another game in my life. Why has it got this such massive dead zone and stuff? So I had to change all that. It looked like it was running like shit. It was running at 30 frames a second. Again, I had to go in the menu and turn it off from 30 frames to 60 frames. It's like, why? Just give me 60 frames. And then the first level, you're in this like just cruise ship, broken down cruise ship thing. And it's just not pretty at all. And you're trying to get out of this crappy little room. And it's like, what the hell am I doing this? So it doesn't make a good first impression. But once you get out and you've passed all the tutorial crap and you found a safe house and stuff, it is a very okay multiplayer shooter.
Fine, I guess.
So it's kind of like Dead Island in a way. It's more about the people that are there with you. But I would say Dead Island's a much, much better game, for one. But if you've got some friends on, you might as well have a bit of a play on Redfall. It's not bad. It's just not good. It's just that we've got so many good games released these days. Mediocre games don't get a showing, and this is what it is. It's a mediocre game, but it's free. It's on It's on Game Pass. So we've had a nice few hours shooting some vampires in the face, and we'll keep on it for a little bit. Probably won't complete it, but you know, if you've got Game Pass and you've got a few friends that want to give it a try, I think it's worth a shot. But if you're expecting anything like Dishonored or anything like that, no.
Yeah. Okay.
And like all these little, all these ways that they said at the beginning before they released about how we could approach it differently in different ways, like you could sneak in and you could go guns blazing, blah blah blah. There's basically there's basically a hole in the roof, so you can either choose to go in through a hole in the roof, or you can just go in the front door. It's no different. It's not really a choice.
Not really. Not really. Yeah. Okay. You're not going to be getting any sort of bonuses for not killing anyone in that game.
No, not at all. No.
Right. Fine.
And I will bring out another special mention of a game I've played. Is because I'll ask you the same question as well. What have you been playing on your Steam Deck? And the game I've been playing on my Steam Deck is Next Machina. And if you don't know that one, it's actually the same people that made Resogun. It's made by Housemarque. The game they made before Returnal. And this game was a collaboration with, you'll know this guy anyway, Eugene Jarvis. So Eugene Jarvis was the game designer. Defender. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And Super Smash TV. And it's basically Super Smash TV, but in like but voxels and in like a... in a futuristic, you're killing robots and stuff in a futuristic world, but it's again, like I said, that Resogun is the perfect defender. Next Machina is the perfect Smash TV, and that's saying something because Smash TV is like one of my best games. I would say Next Machina is above that. It's just so tight. It's got the inspiration from Housemarque through Resogun and through Stardust. And it's got that from Eugene Jarvis as well. It's just perfect. And it's such a shame that it sold so shit that they abandoned arcade games because it sold so badly.
Wow, really?
Yeah. And they had plans to have an arcade machine made. And because of the bad sales, they scrapped it. And I'm like, man, this game is so good and tight, but it's not what people wanted then at that point.
But does it say, big money, big prices?
It does not say big money, big prices, unfortunately, yeah. Yeah, and it's a little effort to get it working on the deck. You've got to change some settings and stuff, and it doesn't run at a flat 60. If you go into ProtonDB, there's just basically 2 command line options that you need to add at the end of the Steam launch commands, and then it launches fine. But it's unsupported officially on the Steam Deck, but you can get it running very easily, and it's just a perfect game just to twin stick shoot. Just when you've got 5-10 minutes, just clear out a level. And I got obsessed with it, and And I think one of the unique things about how the life system works is like when you die, you don't just instantly get your life back and carry on. You have to start that segment of the level again. So you've got to sort of make it perfect. You've got to make that level perfect. It's sort of in the same way as Resogun. It's like a dance. And it's, you know what I mean? It's not just about shooting enemies. You've got to work. It's a game you need to play multiple times to see where the enemy's going to spawn each time. And sort of like Resogun. Resogun had this thing of when enemies spawned, it's not the sequences are the same. It's always the same sequence in every level, but the place where the enemies spawn depends on your location. So there is variety in how you can manipulate where enemies are going to be to get a good combo and things like this. And it's just something that you've got to learn. And you don't remember it. It's just muscle memory of just knowing where them turns are. And then each time you play it, you can just like refine that turn just from muscle memory. And it's just like, when you get that high score, it's just like, yes, you know, that adrenaline pumps in, and that's it. Love it.
Yeah, it's like every good shooter's like that. Like, you know, like Rez back in the day was like that. You know, it was all about that. It was all intuition, and it was all about that flow state, right? So yeah, it sounds cracking. I can't believe I've not played it, but then by the sounds of it, nobody played it.
Yeah.
So you know,
and that's another thing about Resogun. As good as it looks still on the PS4, it's just a shame they have not done a PC version yet. Because I would love to play Resogun on the deck. I would absolutely ruin those joysticks on my deck playing Resogun. Just it would be good.
Yeah.
And so, what have you been playing, Prox? Have you played some games?
I'll be honest. Last couple of months, it's been less than I have done a few months before that. But I have been. I think 2023 was a year where I played a lot of stuff, but I didn't really enjoy very much of it, if I'm honest. Last couple of months, one of the games I played, I caught up on a load of stuff, and I played Return of the Obra Dinn.
This black and white one.
That's right. It's like a 1-bit adventure. I bought it on release. It's Lucas Pope who did Papers, Please. I bought it on release, and it bounced off me, if I'm entirely honest with me. I love the graphical style of it, but I found it hard to get into. Left it all these years, and I think I read about, you know, there's been a lot of, like, Edge have been doing like their top 100 games of all time, or rather in the span of their magazine, and I've read a few different sort of top 100s recently, and Obra Dinn was coming in a lot of them. I was like, I've got to give it another crack, really. So I give it another crack, and genuinely, like, when I got into it, my life, I did not leave it for the entire span.
It finally clicked.
I started playing. So I started it, I played it, and I was like, I had to tear myself away from it to sleep, and then next day up again, do it. And it's not the longest game. I think it's maybe 8 hours if you shit like I am.
So, what was the moment that convinced you that you needed to play it more? Like in the game, was there like a certain point in like the mission where you solved something and you were like, that's it, that's how I do it?
It was just, I think it was just, oh my God. There was like, I can't remember the exact moment. And honestly, I wouldn't want to give any spoilers anyway. But it's like, there was a moment where I was like, that's the person. Oh my gosh. I remember seeing them before in that place. I remember this was happening. I remember these people were around him. Oh my gosh, it's all coming together. That's like unlocked a big sort of sub-story for me, if you like. And I was like, right, well, if that's a sub-story, what else were they in? Where else were they? What else was going on? Oh my gosh, yeah. And so anyway, I got heavily into it. I really enjoyed it. It's perfect on deck. It's absolutely perfect on deck. As you might expect, it's not a graphical powerhouse with it being 1-bit, but it is smooth as you like, because it's been well written to be intended to be 3D, but just 1-bit. And the battery lasts forever on it. So it's just like a great... I tell you what, if you are on a long train ride or a long plane ride, or you're having a weekend away somewhere, and you, instead of taking a book, take Return of the Obra Dinn, if you've not played it before, you know, it's amazing. But since then, I enjoyed it so much, and I was like, I want more games like this. So I just played loads of detective games after that. And some of them were better than others. Not gonna lie. But ones that stood out to me, I played Tangle Tower, which is an indie game, and it's got really sort of stark. I don't know how to describe the graphical style. It's really bold, it's blocky, it's outlined, but actually it was a really good puzzle game. And again, that was just another game that I started and I just carried on playing until I finished. It was maybe 4 hours, but some really good puzzles in it. There's a sequel out for that one this year, so that's like, yes, great, I'm on board with that. Can't remember the name of the sequel. We'll stick it down in the comments or something.
Did you play this on the deck as well? Would you say you do most of your gaming on the deck these days?
I would say I probably have done 90% of my gaming on the deck, if not more. I think I play almost everything on deck now. To the point where if I'm looking on a store page for a game and it's not on deck, I don't want to know.
Right, really?
And
wow.
I guess, yeah, I like to the point I won't buy it if it's not on deck because I know I won't get around to playing it now. So like actually, like, you know, where you're saying that Next Machine is unsupported, but actually it works well. This is where Proton DB is your best friend, right? You never take your first answer, right?
That's actually something we are going to discuss in a bit. Is what can make SteamOS better? So in fact, I'll leave that until we start talking.
We'll leave
about
it there, but let's not forget.
I will remember this point to refer to that.
No doubt, my man. Yeah, Tangle Towers Ace. I can't remember the name of the sequel. Like I said, it's worth playing. It's a hidden little gem. In the Steam sale, you can pick it up for about £3. $3 euro pounds, as we like to say on this pod.
Yep.
And it's well worth every single one of them. And then I also played The Case of the Golden Idol, which is brilliant too, and Ghost Trick. But I'm not going to get into lots and lots of detective games.
Oh, they're more detective games, right?
Suffice to say, there are a lot of great detective games that are available, and if it's an itch you want to scratch, you can keep yourself occupied for a good while.
So then, on to the main topic. Yes, we are going to the main topic now after that little detour, but it's fine. The main topic is, and I'm not quite sure how to phrase this. I was going to do this as a feature video, and then Prox had some questions about it. And I was like, this is probably better to talk about in a podcast. I am not confident that SteamOS is going to be a success, and I really want it to be, and I think things need to change about it, basically. And what was your opinion first, actually, on the SteamOS? Do you have SteamOS or do you have Windows on your Steam Deck?
Oh no, I only have SteamOS on my deck. I'm not putting Windows on there. It's too much of a faff. Why would I? Everything I want to play works on it.
There's some good guides out there in the top corner.
I'm led to believe there's this guy we've got, Mohawk, who's really good at making sure you get some good guides for Steam Deck. But no, SteamOS works for me, and I think it works for most people. So I don't dispute that. I think it could be improved. But I'd be really interested to know about like what you think, why you think it might fail, and what failure looks like to you.
SteamOS, or specifically SteamOS 3.0, the one that we know now based on Arch, HaloOS, it was released 2 years ago, right? And that already accounts for 40% of Linux users. That's a huge percentage. Like, Linux has been around since the beginning of time, literally, like 000 recurring epoch time. That's where it comes from. Oh, okay, Unix time, whatever. Unix, Linux, same thing. Come on, let me have that one. And that is a lot of market share to make up in that time. But what percentage of Linux users do you think there are on the recent Steam survey?
So 40% of all Linux users use SteamOS, but how many of all Steam's overall user base basically are using using Linux or SteamOS?
Yes.
I mean, it used to be under 1%. It's got to be more than that by now. It's got to be around. I'm not going to go crazy. I'm going to say 3-4%.
Okay, it's just under 2%, and 97% is Windows, with the other 1% being Mac, obviously. There's no
Mac. Come on.
There's no sort of official numbers for this, but from what I can gather, there are 120 million unique users a month on Steam. So that would make Linux around 2.3 million users, and in turn that would make the deck just under 1 million users. Those using HoloOS, because basically all of SteamOS is on the Steam Deck, basically. There's only one more company now that are releasing an unofficial SteamOS, Halo OS, and that will be the AO Neo Next Lite. And I commend them for doing that. I hope that more companies do that. But if you look at the bigger players, the Lenovo Legion Go, the Acer, is it Acer or is it Asus? The ROG Ally, these are Windows. Everything, all the other ones are Windows. The new MSI Claw, which is coming, also Windows. Is these big companies aren't picking up SteamOS, and the reason I believe is that Steam are the gatekeepers of SteamOS. They're the ones that are holding the keys, and companies have already been bitten once by Steam with Steam 2.0 or what it was, the Debian-based one for the Steam machine, like the Steam machine I have back there somewhere. And it was a flop, and they abandoned it, and all the companies that were making Steam machines were very let down by that because they'd specifically built these machines. Some of them didn't get released because of how bad the SteamOS was at that time. So there's a lot of trust to win back there, and also because they could just go at any time. It's not like Windows. Like people might say, well, you're still trusting the company to make Windows. You're trusting Microsoft. Like, yeah, but Microsoft are as of today, a $3 trillion company with lots of different KPIs and stuff for these manufacturers. These manufacturers aren't just taking Windows and putting it on machines. They're having licenses for 10, 20 years with Microsoft to guarantee a service. You're not getting that service from Steam. You're just trusting them to provide the OS, which they've proven in the past that they can't do. So I am hopeful that they're going to keep on with this, but I think they need to release it fully into the community, so then the community can take it over. And also, not just that, is other companies can start their input as well. Because at the moment, if you wanted to contribute to SteamOS, you can't. There's no way for a company to provide their software into SteamOS without probably going to Valve themselves, and who knows, they might not get it. But if it was released as fully open sourced, then other companies could start providing the service into there. And also, this is the other thing, is because there's SteamOS and the Steam front end, the Steam client, two different things. SteamOS is open source. Steam client is not open source. It's proprietary. And every time you launch SteamOS, you are booted straight into the Steam client. Proprietary software, which is their store. That needs to go. They need to replace that with something open source, sort of like Lutris or Heroic, or there's other Playdate, Chimera. There's lots of different open sourced front ends that could be used by Steam to feed their stuff into them instead of trying to force. Because if you want to add a non-Steam game to Steam, it is a pain. It's possible. It's not hard, but it's still a pain. You can't just go, I want to buy this game from Epic or anything.
Yeah. And so, know, like earlier when I said, if it doesn't work on deck, I'm unlikely to buy the game now. I'll go further than that. If I have to go to another storefront to buy it, to then try and get it running on Steam Deck, I'm also unlikely to buy it. I will only, but I am pretty much what Steam love now, which is I have my deck. They don't really care how much I've messed around with it. I've messed around with it a bit, but basically, I boot into Steam client. I buy things from Steam Store. I play things on Steam, and that's me. And I think of those, probably whatever suspected 1 to 2 million Steam Deck devices that are out in the wild that you're saying there, I would imagine that most people are like me.
I'll just put my stats with a grain of salt. So I haven't got confirmation of this, but it's apparently 120 million users a month. And obviously the Steam survey is only sent to a subset of people and only the people that reply. So that percentage might not represent everyone, but apparently it's a lot, and it gives you a rough sort of idea. But them numbers are not perfect. Just remember that, okay? So don't complain to me out there. So, but I would guess that there's probably around 1 million Steam Decks out in the world, right? And that's the only place that is using SteamOS, basically. There's a few other places, but there's other things like the SteamOS itself. There is a fork on GitHub from Halo ISO, who are basically just mirroring SteamOS, and it explicitly says SteamOS does not work on NVIDIA GPUs. And again, if we go back to the Steam survey, well, in fact, do you want to guess? So how many percent of GPUs are NVIDIA, and how many percent are AMD, would you say?
NVIDIA is definitely the major player. I don't think we're talking 97% like Windows is. I think we're talking 65.
It's actually bigger than that. It's bigger than I thought. NVIDIA is 75% of all GPUs, and AMD is 15%, with the other 10% being Intel. So so only 15% of GPUs can run SteamOS in the first place.
Okay.
So
it doesn't feel like Valve's tactic is to get SteamOS installed on anything other than a Steam Deck at this point. They're not asked about
They've promised this. They've promised this from SteamOS 3.1 that they are going to release it into the wild, and they've promised that. And it's 2 years later and they're still not.
But maybe that's because they've realised it's not that important to them. Do you know? Why as Valve, what would make it important to them to then basically make their OS that is optimized for a single device with a single there's variant configurations, but fundamentally the same architecture. It's a single device footprint, right? To go from that to being one that supports multiple architectures, multiple configurations, that's a lot of effort and a lot of resource that you're probably going to have to put into support staff, especially if you're not going to be making it community based. So, like, I from a business point of view, why the hell would Valve let it out there to anyone else? It's their business is not selling or getting people to use their OS. Their business is getting people to buy games from them rather than Epic or rather than from somewhere else, right? So I totally get why their client would only boot into theirs. I do think it's interesting, right? You mentioned there about it being community owned and it has to be open source, and then other people can contribute it to its long lasting success. I would say that Android is probably the closest parallel to that, right? Outside in similar devices, that's about going on to multiple handsets, multiple manufacturers, all that kind of thing. And Google started it off. Still probably the most major contributor. They will be the most major contributor to Android, of course they will, but there are other people that contribute to that whole ecosystem. Sure, and it works. But then on the other side, you've got Apple, and they sell more phones than anyone else. And no, they don't sell more phones than anyone else, do they? That's actually not true. But they have the most active users who continue to buy every new version that comes out, or at least every other version or every other version after that. But basically, once you're in the Apple ecosystem, you're in the Apple ecosystem, right? Very rarely do people switch and change from that divide. And I think that's what Steam are going after. They want you to get your first Steam Deck and enjoy it and realise, bloody hell, this is console gaming on a PC. This is me. Most users, I don't think, give a shit whether it's a Linux backend or a Windows backend. They just want to play their games. Most users just want to play games on a machine that's handheld, right? Because if you don't, that's when you get a box PC. And the people are moving away from the idea of owned machines and hardware being, like it or not, that bit more disposable. I know you've got your shelves full of old hardware, right? In exactly, and for it'll have a place in all our hearts. And I just think that the shift of consumerism now, again, like it or not, is to be that bit more, I don't know, transient. It's like, you've got a Steam Deck today, tomorrow you might have a Steam Deck 2, tomorrow you might have a Steam Deck 3. And as long as you've got a Steam Deck, Valve don't really care if you're buying a bloody ROG one or whatever. I don't think they're chasing that market.
I guess the thing is, like, even if you've got an ROG Ally or MSI Claw or any of the others, Ioneo, there's plenty of, there's so many now, and that's a great thing. Even if
it means that people want portable PC games, right?
But even if you've got Windows, if 99.9% of those machines haven't got Steam on, I would be very, very shocked.
This is it.
Literally every single one will have Steam on regardless, right?
So maybe that's it. Maybe that's what they were after all along, right? They wanted to, they knew that, they're looking at the way that things are changing. Most gamers now, I know a lot of people that moved from having a desktop PC and all the rigs that come with it, and people still buy them, don't get me wrong, but a lot of people went from that to a gaming laptop not that long ago. And maybe going from a gaming laptop to a handheld device is what Valve were seeking all along, and to keep people buying Steam stuff rather than a Meta, coming along and setting up a shop, or Epic taking that slice, or whoever it might be. Maybe that's what they were after all along, making sure they continued to be the dominant player as the Switch went to handheld. Because they can't help but notice that Nintendo have sold 130 odd million Switch consoles. There's a market out there for handheld gaming. There's always been a market for handheld gaming since the Game Boy and before that, Game & Watch, right? So
yeah, and I suppose
maybe that's what they've been after all along.
And you just asked a question, which was a very short question, which was, but do they need to? And now that I've thought about it and the arguments you put, it's like, well, no, they don't, do they? They don't. They don't need to make SteamOS a success. As long as it's still working on their machine, it doesn't really matter, does it? If other people use it, if other people do, they can.
Yeah,
and
maybe it's a gateway. Maybe that's all it is.
I mean,
maybe
for me, it would be nice if what the compromise then could be is while Valve are still releasing SteamOS and doing updates, as long as there's someone doing a fork, and maybe like Ioneo and some of the other smaller players can keep forking that and just doing downstream and upstream updates to their own version of it, take the good bits from the official, and then the official can take the good bits from them, and that keeps going as long as possible. I mean, that is basically the thing that will. This is the thing that will, in the end, save SteamOS, and it's if you look at like Windows machines now, a lot of the new CPUs. So a lot of the old CPUs do not support Windows 11. Anything below Intel 7000 series cannot install Windows 11 because of TPM.
My work laptop.
Yeah. So all those machines are eventually going to stop receiving updates. Drivers are going to break. New devices aren't going to work. My laptop down there is running Fedora, and all the Wi-Fi cards in it have been abandoned by Intel like 5 years ago. But the community have been providing updates themselves for Linux all the damn time. So that machine is 10 years old, but it's still running, all thanks to the community who make Fedora, Red Hat, everyone who just GNU, Linux themselves. Yeah. So that is probably the silver lining, whether SteamOS fails or not. If SteamOS does fail this time, not like the old SteamOS, which was basically just a very basic fork of Debian, which had Steam on it. This has got Proton, and they've put a lot of work into Proton, and they have now got that 1% market share, which is not a lot in the big scheme of things, but it is now enough that if Valve, I always get Steam and Valve interchangeable. If Valve decide to abandon SteamOS and say, look, we've had enough, we're not bothered anymore, someone will take that over and keep that going for the next 10 years. This Steam Deck will outlast. I will guarantee you this Steam Deck will be getting updates for probably 10 years longer than the PS5 and the Xbox Series S and X will. This will still be supported. It will still get updates when everything else is gone, because the community, if Valve if Valve decide they've had enough of making SteamOS, someone else will, and it'll keep going.
Yeah, but this is why they need to, back to your point there, this is why them being gatekeepers and them keeping so much of it closed off is actually a little dangerous, right? So yeah, there's forks of it, the actual OS itself. You could argue the client isn't necessary if you do swap it out for one of those more open source multi-store front ends or launchers that you mentioned earlier. But it does require to keep the hardware alive. It does require the OS layer to be practical, because relying on Windows to keep it up and running, like to your point there about the laptop under your desk, right? If we're expecting our Steam Deck to still run Windows in, I'd give it 3-5 years, I bet it won't. There'll be chipsets in there that it just doesn't want to know. It'll probably be the AMD graphics card or, something.
At the moment, the OLED version of the deck, there's no Wi-Fi drivers for Windows because they're not available. Valve said that they are working on them, but they're not available yet.
Not. They don't care.
They don't care. They want you to.
They provide those for Windows, and all it means is that people's not using the way in that they want you to use in. And it's like, do you know what? I think one thing I will give Valve credit for is they could have easily stopped a lot of the third-party stuff that, or they could have made it more difficult to access the third-party stuff that you can, even though it's got the Linux underlayer. If they didn't want you to be installing EmuDeck or DecuLoader or any of the other quality of life stuff that people have done, or Heroic or Lutris, if they didn't want you to install that stuff, they could have made it really more difficult to do so, right?
Yeah, they could have. And in fact, I think once Valve did break Decky, and then a few hours later they put a patch out to fix it because they didn't mean to break it.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's that embrasure that they're doing. They're like going, chuck stuff on, but chuck it on our stuff, right? We're okay. You want to play emulated stuff, we're not asked about that. You want to put more colours or change your fans on stuff, that's all good. We're fine with that kind of thing. As long as you can factory restore back to SteamOS, we're all good. As long as you're never a few clicks away from getting you back on our store, and that's where it boils down to, we're all good. And so it doesn't surprise me that, I don't know, I'm being a bit disingenuous there. I don't think Steam are probably purposefully not releasing a Wi-Fi 6E driver for OLED, but also it's not going to be their priority, because that makes it more difficult for you to buy Steam games on Steam, not less difficult. That's their strategy, innit? How can we make sure that the games you buy are on Steam by surfacing the ones that are compatible with the thing you're holding in your hand and making it dead easy to buy in 3 clicks?
Yeah,
and that's what it's all about.
And just remember that this is just all theories. We're imagining Steam as this one homogenous bubble and not the people within. Yeah. So I'm sure there's different opinions throughout the company or Valve. But it's nice to theorize sometimes, right? About these things and have an imagination about it. So, but it is. But also, with the SteamOS, the point you were making earlier, Next Machina is unsupported on the deck. And if you just go to ProtonDB and look at the first comment and look at what the commands they put in to make it run, it's just copy, paste, put it in, maybe install GE Proton as well, which is the only Proton I use is GE Proton 27 or something, because it supports all the codexes that Valve aren't legally allowed to ship. But I shouldn't need to do this. It's like, why can't
you're right,
every game just automatically see ProtonDB, look at what commands need to be filled in, and then all these games would just work out of the box? It's it's not a problem for people like us, and I know this might sound condescending to some people, but not everyone wants to mess about with a PC. Some people just want to turn on turn on your console and play the game, which is the deck is supposed to be. The deck is like mostly a console. Turn it on, play a game. Not turn it on, play a game. Game doesn't work. Go to Google, find some information, try and work out how to copy on a touchscreen, which is holding down really long and then clicking copy, and going for all these steps. Most people don't want to do that. It needs to be more
exactly.
seamless.
I mean, do you know what? You're absolutely right. Like, if there are better configs out there, they should be applied by default where they can be. And I appreciate there's some curation there that Valve is going to have to do to ensure malware don't get loaded in and all that kind of business. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
If there could be, I don't think, again, it shouldn't be on Valve's shoulders themselves. Probably is like there's how many thousands and hundreds of thousands of games on Steam. It would be an impossible job for an entire team of people. Impossible, but it is not impossible for an entire community of open source people. So they should have some sort of trust with either a community who can do this, like ProtonDB, or the developers themselves could say, oh, hang on a minute, these commands are needed to run on the Steam Deck. Valve, can you make this automatic for us, please? We've confirmed that these are the ones that work. Just put them in, please.
Yeah. I think it absolutely always makes me, I agree with you, because you and I both believe in the power of good and the power of collectivism, right? But we've also both worked in computers long enough to know that bad actors exist everywhere, including devs of their own games who'll ship out games that have got a backdoor in them that I'm then going to apply a config to come and mine bloody Ethereum on your machine or whatever. So there's always things, and I can only assume it's that sort of stuff. But what I would say is, like, even if you can't do it directly, to be able to look at it and say, apply this yes or no, this is what it does. You can absolutely put a translation on there that says this is what this is expected to do. Are you sure you want to apply it? In the same way that you can get controller configs from the community, why can't you get a game launch config from the community?
That's good. I like that. Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
And
why can't you get?
Yeah.
That's all it needs, right? And also a settings config. So there's like plugins, for Decky that you can get that say this is change your game setting to do this, and you'll get frames of this, and you'll use this much power or whatever. Why can't we just have that integrated too? Game config, settings config, controller config, all community driven, all locked down and sort of translated in a nice way. That's what, and it's all those quality of life and easy use stuff that'll make it that SteamOS actually does have a bit of life in it. And I'm sure Valve's long-term strategy is, we don't care what OS is actually run on this thing. We've got our thing running on it right now because that's what we need to do to make sure eyeballs see Steam. That's just my opinion. Again, just speculating. But if you want it to be continued in the future, it's things like that. And it's stuff like that. Because if that was there, you wouldn't have bothered with Windows for half the time that you've bothered with it.
No, I wouldn't actually.
If you had a one-click way of launching it, the reason you've got Windows on yours, again, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think the reason you've got Windows on yours is because you don't trust that Steam is actually going to launch your games in the right way.
No, actually, I'll be honest. The only reason I've got Windows on my deck is to make videos. Quite honestly, is I would say, yeah, because I can. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say
enough.
that I would even go as high as 99%. Actually, 99% of my gaming on Steam Deck is SteamOS, with the other 1% being benchmarks on Windows and not actually playing any games. And I have now got Game Pass, Xbox Game Pass, which will only work on Windows. Yep. I don't play those games on deck because I'd much rather be in SteamOS playing the games that naturally work on SteamOS. Quite honestly, I can't be bothered to be in Windows with the stupidly loud fan and the screen tearing because the frame pacing doesn't always worked very well on Windows, in my opinion. It's nice that it runs, and I've got something to compare it to and stuff. But yeah, I don't use Windows at all. I've got it on there, taking up space, and it's nice
That's
to have.
So you.
But
yeah. Completed it, mate. Done it. Yeah, it's but you know, it's great to have options, and there will be times, and you've done videos where like the performance has outstripped it in Windows over SteamOS. You know, we've got to have and I think that level of healthy competition is no bad thing. That idea that, you know, maybe we don't know all these things, and maybe people can help us make this better. It's win-win for Valve. I did it there.
Yeah, it did.
It's win-win for Valve because all this stuff is about making you play better games on Steam, right? Play games better on Steam, and it's still all about getting more people to play games on Steam. You know.
So let's talk about.
It's so fascinating, that Game Pass. I can't believe that's mind blowing to me. Now I can't play Game Pass because my ADHD, and I just can't ever pick anything.
Right.
But like, fascinating to me that somebody like you's got the Game Pass, loves the Game Pass, loves the variety and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I've got that many games in my backlog that I don't need to.
Yeah, fair. Yeah.
But
I think that's probably it. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
But speaking about like the other consoles, so there are more powerful consoles like ROG Ally runs Windows. Would you buy one?
No, I don't care about it.
Would you? But is that because it runs Windows 11? If it ran SteamOS, would you buy it?
Because I've already got a Steam Deck. I don't need one.
Or about one of the MSI Claw, Legion Ally, anything like that?
I don't need another one.
What about a Steam Deck OLED?
Oh yeah, I've bought one of them. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I thought you didn't need. I thought you
next 3
yes,
to 5
I know.
days.
Yeah, but you just said you didn't need another one. So why have you bought another one? So you're not tempted by all of these things, but you're tempted by a Steam Deck OLED. Tell me why that specifically. Just the screen.
It's the screen. I mean, it's the screen, the battery, the weight. It's a combination. It's an incremental upgrade, right? So I bought a Switch OLED, and I was astounded by how much nicer it was. I always suspected it would be nicer, but I was blown away by just how much nicer it was. And I loved my old Switch. I mean, I've had loads of Switches, but yeah, I was blown away by the difference. And when I bought my first Steam Deck, I purposefully bought the 512 gig model just because it had what was described as a premium
etched screen,
and etched screen or whatever it's called. And I had my OLED Switch at the time, so I was like, I want the best screen I can, because the screen for me on a portable gaming device is what makes or breaks it, right? And it is fascinating that I don't care about an MSI Claw or an ROG Ally. And I think you know, harking back to my earlier point about Apple, I think honestly at this point I've got stupid sexy fanboy loyalty towards Valve and Steam. And I'm not thinking it's SteamOS, but what I am thinking is, I know this thing that I've already got, I don't have it with me. I know this thing that I've already got, and I am holding it because it's that big in it, already works. And I know it works, and I know I like it. It's my favourite device. It's my sole device for gaming, pretty much now. I guess I have played Switch still a bit when I think about it, and I have played a little bit of PS, but it's fundamentally, it's my primary gaming device now. And I know it works. So getting an OLED for me was basically like, well, I know it works, and I know that I like the bits about it that it has that's different. So yeah.
Familiarity. You know what experience you're going to get next. If you bought an ROG Ally now, then buttons are different places, there's no touch pads, the back buttons, everything will feel a little different, and it's running Windows. And you're like, oh no, I've got to press the.
I think it is genuinely.
Start menu
there are lots of little differences. I think the controllers would be a big thing. I am absolutely used to Steam controllers now, and I had a Steam controller before that.
Steam controller, yeah, early adopter as well, right?
It is interesting that I've done that though. It's an absolute contradiction, and I can't believe that I've done it. But also, I can't believe I've waited this long.
I am amazed that your sole gaming platform is now Steam Deck, but I've also heard this from other people as well that they've just converted completely to the Steam Deck. But for me, it is my complementary device. I will do most of my gaming on my PC, my nice ultra wide monitor with my PC.
Yeah,
got my consoles. That's to say I don't like my Steam Deck. Obviously, I do. I make software for it sometimes, and I do play it. But for me, it's like, oh, we've got 5 minutes. Or I've got 30 minutes. Or I'm going somewhere. That's when I use my Steam Deck. It's just there. And I'm like, yes, I'm not bored. I'm not bored now. It's not my main device, but it is still very important. It's like, this is my main computer, but if I've got 5-10 minutes and I want to kill some time, like I need to set a nice score next machine, how can I do that? I don't know. I'll get my deck. There it is. It's like, poof. Oh, someone's shouting me. I'll just turn it off and put it down.
Yeah, exactly. Suspend and go.
Yeah.
I don't know. My gaming habits changed a few years back, if I'm entirely honest. And now I think about it, I became a living room gamer a few years back, to the point I moved my desktop PC into the living room, and that was where I played my PC games, and that became less and less. So I bought a laptop, and I played on the laptop quite a bit, but it was still, it wasn't primarily a gaming machine. It was just an a bit of everything. But the fact is, I can play games on it. And then, so yeah, my gaming habits have changed. So I picked up my deck. So it's not a complimentary thing for me anymore. It is my primary machine. All those points you raised, they're there. But then what I really like about it as well is I kind of like that it's got a limited battery life, and that battery life is not 8 hours or whatever. Because when I was saying there before about doing sessions on Obra quite like that it's a 3-hour go. Like, I played through the entirety of Marvel's Midnight Suns on battery rather than plugged in. And I did it purposefully because I was like, right, well, I can play this. After 2 hours or 3 hours, it's about 2 or 3 hours, a full charge, it's going to run out. And I'm going to be like, right, cool, time to move on. For somebody like me, it was like, time is a little bit more precious than it used to be. And I don't have time to just do ploughing sessions. But I'd like to have a nice sustained burst at doing something. Just everything about the deck just works for me. Everything works about it. I am an absolute fanboy gusher at this point, but it's right for me. But before that, it was the Switch, so I'd already bought up, and it was exactly the same as you. I had 1 billion games that I already owned for this platform. If Steam Deck had come out when Switch came out, I would never have bought a Switch.
Yeah.
And yet it's probably my most played platform, since its launch. So,
yeah, I wish I had some counters now, but I think you've pretty much convinced me. Actually, my argument just sort of fell down. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's like, why do they need to make it accessible? They don't. They just need to keep it going as long as the Steam Deck keeps going. And as soon as they stop, someone else will carry on. So they don't need to make it big. They don't need to, because it's not something that they can ever make a profit from, because it's the Steam client that they're. Yeah, okay. My argument has completely fallen down, and I can see. But like I say, I was just worried because I do love SteamOS. I was just worried that it would go away from me. It would be gone from my life. But that was thinking from a very capitalist sort of standpoint, that it needed to get big. Whereas it doesn't need to get big. It just needs to chug along at the pace that it's going, basically, right? And as long as someone's supporting it, everyone's happy.
So that's where I would like. So before when you brought this to me, I asked you a few questions about it, and I did that to sort of help, you get your argument out and think about what your position was more than anything. And I was very much of the view of they don't need to do anything differently. It's there, and it's there to do that. But I think they're your point of somebody will continue it. I think as long as they could become a bit more malicious about this kind of stuff and shut off back doors in a Nintendo type way and make it so that modding it is ridiculous. But people will always find a way. But I think where Valve can really set themselves apart now and gain the goodwill and continue to, at the end of the day, right, I can't believe that a platform whose primary function is to sell you stuff is so beloved by so many in a community that is very much focused around, I want all this, I want it as much as I can get, I want all this to be free. Most gamers don't like paying for stuff, or which is why subscriptions exist and all that. But I think where Valve can really set itself apart is open those doors to allow people to continue this, to be the torchbearers of it. And I think that will continue the goodwill that has built up. Because I think they're a bit of a necessary evil of Valve. People would prefer not to. People would prefer to have DRM-free games for everything. But the reality is, as long as you can get your stuff, that's the important bit, right? So what Valve have done is create a device that makes it really easy to get the stuff that you already have, or to procure more stuff from them. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So, and at this part, if we were doing this live, I would have asked some maybe Q&As, but we're not. So next time we are going to try and do this live. So if you've got any questions that you want to ask, then maybe drop them down in the comments here, or save them for next time we do a video. We are going to try and do one a month. So this is January's. We're going to do another one at the end of February, I hope. And we've not decided on a topic yet. So again, if you want to do some suggestions, again, we'll happily talk about anything, as long as it's game related.
Anything. Yeah, as long as it's game related, and as long as we can do something like this, where
if we've got an opinion,
a bit of long form on it. Yeah.
But
if you're going to ask us what our opinion is of Baldur's Gate 3, it's going to be a boring video.
Yeah, it's like
we don't have one.
I've literally never seen it.
Yeah.
I have no intention of seeing it. Yeah, and I've no interest at all.
We're not those kind of gamers.
No. But if you want to know about games that came out last year at some point or 10 years ago, then we're here to talk about those games. So Mr. Prox, thank you very much for joining us. And if you want to subscribe to Prox Play Stuff, he might finally be getting around to playing stuff or talking about stuff on his channel.
I think it's going to be a bit more of a pivot. I'm expecting to launch a new channel anytime soon. So
interesting.
Keep your eyes peeled. Do you know what? I'll plug it when it's there.
Okay. And if it's ready, I'll put a link in the description or something as well. So, yes, we'll catch you in February.